As you can see here, I've just got some grinding paste here, and you only need to put a small amount on the back of these valves. So you just take a little bit, I usually just use the finer end, and just put it really just dab it around the back of the valve, such as that. That's probably more than I would need. Take a little bit off, just run it around, then just run some around this valve seat as well. Being careful not to push any down this recess, of course. We've got that in there like that. Now when you push the valve in, it's also a good idea just to push it in, maybe using your finger, trying not to get any of this paste going back into this engine. So we'll just pop that back in. And all you need to do though is just take your grinding stick really, just if you can get it on, it's a bit difficult, it's like a plunger, just pop it on, basically turn it, just until it grinds the two surfaces together. Maybe take 2 or 3 minutes. Then after a minute or so, should probably enough, just push this valve back out. Hopefully by now you'll be able to see if I just wipe this excess off here. And just start it seeing on there, just to form a nice clean edge. As you can see around here, it's nice and silver. That's where the two surfaces have just been ground together. That just creates a nice seal, and it will also help with the compression of the mower. So I'm trying to film as good as I can there. You can see there's a nice silver thin edge around there. Looking for you don't want any pitted bits or anything like that. And that's looking nice and clean now. And hopefully this will just help this mower start up and run just a little bit better. Obviously I'll do both valves, that's just one of them done. So when you've done, just make sure you clean every little bit out. Get your finger and just get all these little bits of paste out. You don't want any of this going back in. Just clean it all off. Make sure there's none gone in. Get as clean as you can. It's also worth just oiling up these valve stems before you push them back in. Just pop some oil on just to get them in here so there's no sticking or anything like that. And you just poke them back in, straight back to the back. And also before we put the springs on, we'll just have a look at these valve clearances and just check that they're correct. While I've got everything out and the camera's still on, I'll just do the exhaust one as well. Obviously exactly the same procedure. Just make sure there's a nice edge on it before you put it all back together. Like I say, just 2 or 3 minutes is more than enough really. As long as you've got a nice clean edge on the back of the valve and everything looks clean and tidy. Make sure you wipe everything off. Take a look at this one. Just clean this excess paste off the back of this one. It's just starting to clean up, is that one nicely, as you can see in the light. So as I've said, I'll show you how to do the valve clearances on this. There's not, once it's not an overhead cam, there's not really a specific thing you can do to set the clearances on this. So I'll pop this back in. As you can see, it's looking reasonably good now. I'll pop that back in, making sure I clean the paste off. I'll have them both back in. Before I put the springs in, I'll just show you the valve clearances on this machine. Now to set the clearances, what you need to do is really find top dead centre with the piston on the intake stroke. As you can see this here, this valve's just beginning to open, turning the flywheel the correct way, which is the way it would turn if it was running. You can see the piston's gone back down. When that comes back up and this intake valve closes, that should be, as it is there, that will be top dead centre on the compression stroke. Now as you can see in here, there's only a very small gap. All you need to do basically is put your feeler gauge in and check the gap really between this valve. Now this is in a set position, now you're at top dead centre. There's a little pin in there if you like. You basically pop them in and check it using a feeler gauge, check the valves and the correct specifications really, just to make sure that the valve clearances are set correctly. It's a lot easier actually just to set the clearances with the springs back on, but the problem with doing that is if you do need to make an adjustment to this valve stem, basically to adjust the clearance, you've got to take the springs back off. So if you can find top dead centre, make sure this the inlet valve basically opens and closes and the piston comes up to the top. With it closed again, you should be able to put a feeler gauge in this top one here, as I can there. I mean that's absolutely perfect. It's just dragging on that feeler gauge nice. I know that that gap's correct. Now the specification basically for the inlet valve is between 5 thousandths and 7 thousandths of an inch, which is fine. So I mean I've got the gauge there which is at 6 thousandths and it's maybe a touch tight, but it's not it's not going to make an awful lot of difference. Now the exhaust valve specification is between 7 and 9 of an inch, so I'll just try the exhaust one as well. There's no turning of the engine, you leave it in exactly the same place. The piston's still top dead centre on the compression stroke. Basically, you just, as you can see there, you probably wouldn't even know there was a gap until you put a feeler gauge in. Make sure that the bottom one's between 0.7 and 0.9 thousandths of an inch. So I'll just repeat myself really. The top one, which is the inlet valve, between 0.5 and 0.7 thousandths of an inch. And the exhaust one, if you want to set that one, is between 7 and 9 thousandths of an inch. Normally, with regrinding the valves, it doesn't make a lot of difference to the gap that you'll get here, to the clearance you get. As you can see there, there's just a small gap. So with that done, you just need to put the springs back in. But now if you find that there's a massive gap there, or it's too tight because you've ground them down too far, then the only thing you can do to adjust the valves on this machine is basically to pop the valves back out, and you just have to grind some or file some off the end of this valve stem. Obviously you can't put any back on, but you could always grind some off if the gap was incorrect that way. There's no adjustment on this machine, but you can adjust it, as I've said there, just by filing some off. But be careful not putting the valve in a vise, because you can easily bend it that way. It's probably best just to do it on a little grinder, just, you know, very, very carefully as you go. My advice would be really, if it's not too far out, I would just leave it well alone. So I'll pop these springs back in, and we'll put this machine back together. So I've left this valve spring compressor basically with the spring in. As you can see here, there's the notch on it there. It goes fat at the far side and it goes thin on the inside. So if I push the valve stem through the fat side and push it away from me, it should lock it shut. So we'll give it a go. Just pop this valve, as you can see the valve stem goes back in there. Just pop it through the spring, push it away from you, like that. And when we undo the valve spring, get the tension back. Pull this compressor out. So if it's locked, that's it, it's just click back in there. So when you turn the flywheel now, you should hopefully see the spring. That's it, just compressing nicely. As you can see, it's opened the valve up there. Let's go around again. It's got the spring tension there to close and open it back up. Exactly the same with the bottom one in a minute. As you see, it opens up there. It's just opened up there because it's pushed against it, but as you'll see in a minute, without the spring, it will obviously push back in. So pop the spring on the bottom one, pop this breather cap on, make sure this clean, no overheating issues, make sure this is clean as I've said on previous videos, and we'll get this machine back together and see how it runs. I hope you've enjoyed these latest videos really. As you can see, I just pick these lawnmowers up and whatever needs doing, I just sort of get on with doing it. Now, in this previous video I've been grinding valves and all sorts of things like that. Now generally it's not that difficult to get these lawnmowers running. It's basically just a diaphragm gasket. I just want something that's cleaning out or repairing, or maybe the blades come off, as I've just previously showed you in the last few videos. So it's a very simple business to get in. You can pick these lawnmowers up very cheaply, as I've said. Normally these two I've got the weekend, 30, 40, 50 pound actually. I picked 3 up, a Honda one as well. And they will all sell for a profit once you know the little tips and tricks you need to know to turn these machines around and sell them and make a profit. Now, just one little thing I'd like to mention as well. I've had this book for a few years now. It's actually a Haynes manual on small engines. Sometimes you need to refer back to this just for specifications. I've done it tonight, for example, for the valve clearances on this Briggs 35 Classic engine. It's got loads of different engines in it actually. I'm not sure. It's got Honda, Briggs And Stratton, Tecumseh, you know, 135s, Quantum Intech. There's all sorts in this book. If you want to get started, it's just another source. And I must admit, I'd still refer to this actually quite a lot. It's very good indeed, so that's one to recommend. But I've had quite a lot of new subscribers recently, a sudden influx of people watching the videos. I just wanted to say hello to you all. Thanks very much for subscribing. If you've not subscribed yet, of course, if you're watching the videos and you like them, just hit the subscribe button and you should get an email every time we upload a new one. So thanks for keeping up to date with what's going on. I'll turn these round, these couple of lawnmowers. As I say, I've got one down here now that's filthy. I've got that Honda one outside to do. I've got a Blade Boss to get for that Mountfield one. I'm pretty sure I'll, for £150 spent this weekend, I reckon I'm going to get at least 500 back on that. And I think that's a good turn of profit really. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again.